I'm Mike Sempervive with a special breaking news edition of the Wrestling News. After months of speculation, the news became official on Monday that World Wrestling Entertainment has been purchased by talent and media holding company Endeavor Group. Endeavor also owns the Ultimate Fighting Championships and plans on merging the two iconic ring sports companies into one publicly traded unit. In a press release this morning, Endeavor stated that it will hold 51% controlling interest in the new company, with existing WWE shareholders holding the remaining 49% share. News of the reported sale was broken Sunday night by CNBC's Alex Sherman just hours before Night 2 of WrestleMania was scheduled to begin. This morning on CNBC, Endeavor Chief Executive Officer Ari Emanuel and WWE Chairman Vince McMahon spoke with CNBC reporter Scott Wapner in an interview taped Sunday at SoFi Stadium where WrestleMania was being held.
This is the biggest thing Ari Emanuel and Vince McMahon have ever done.
Yeah.
Combining forces like this there's nothing like this. There's never been anything like this. People have been talking about this for a long time.
There were a lot of other suitors.
Sure they
here.
were, but Ari really, the synergies, everyone was very interested in us, and I appreciate that. But the synergies that Ari brings, totally different than everyone else.
Wapner followed up asking McMahon why he feels the time is right to sell WWE right now.
It's the right time. It's the right time to do the right thing. And it's the next evolution of WWE. I could probably do what Ari is right now with UFC. It'd take me 10 years. By the time I would grab those 10 years, you'd be 10 years ahead again. So it's like, it makes all the sense in the world for all these synergies that we have, to extract all of the value we can out of the marketplace.
When asked about Endeavor's purchase price of $3.9 billion, despite WWE's market cap being valued at an estimated $6.24 billion, here's how Emanuel responded.
Here's what I would say to you. Exactly why we did this, because I think we weren't getting the pure value. I don't think the WWE was getting the pure value. Combined, it's rarefied air, the two of us. And I think the analysts will be able to do it. It's good for the shareholders of WWE and for the shareholders of Endeavor. And then when you look back, I don't believe that the Endeavor shareholders were getting pure play for the rest of the assets that we had. And I think for the first time, you now have the ability to do that in both situations.
Closing the interview, Wapner asked McMahon about what he believes his legacy will be and if he has any regrets following the reveal of both fiduciary and ethical violations in the wake of sexual misconduct allegations and several non-disclosure agreements and legal settlements made as a result.
Well, let me just say that I've made mistakes, obviously, both personally and professionally through my 50-year career. I've owned up to every single one of them and then moved on. I'm not sure, the legacy stuff, I'm not going to write it. So I don't know. I want to say it's someone who had an extraordinary amount of fun, great passion for what they did, and wound up doing the biggest deal he's ever done in his life.
Emanuel chimed in as well, offering his thoughts as to why McMahon deserves the rights to his intellectual property and story.
But let me just say my opinion, because we talked about this. I think that's fair. It is his legacy. He's the one, we're coming together. He's the one that should control his legacy. It shouldn't be controlled by somebody else. And that's actually fair. A legacy, he's built 50 years. It shouldn't be held by anybody else. It should be held by him. That's the right thing to do.
WWE's enterprise value is being estimated at $9.3 billion in comparison to the UFC's $12.1 billion, with the stock price's evaluation at $106 per share. WWE's stock closed at $91.26 a share at Friday's closing bell on the New York Stock Exchange and opened Monday's trading at $85.60, which was down slightly after overnight trading. The power structure of the newly formed company, which will be traded under the ticker symbol TKO, will reportedly see Emanuel acting as chief executive for both Endeavor and the new company, with Patrick Whitesell remaining in his role as Endeavor's executive chairman. Endeavor president and chief operating officer Mark Shapiro will hold the same titles with the newly created company. As part of the restructure, Vince McMahon will become the new entity's executive chairman of the board, while current WWE Chief Operating Officer Nick Khan will serve as WWE's president. UFC President Dana White's position during and after the sale remains unchanged. A new 11-person board of directors will be appointed and include 6 members from the existing Endeavor board and 5 members from WWE. Any transactions still need to be approved by shareholders for both Endeavor and WWE, as well as government and fiduciary regulators. Rumors of WWE being sold began this past January when Vince McMahon began the process to force himself back into the company after resigning in July of 2022 after being accused of sexual misconduct and misappropriation of company funds. The sale brings to an end nearly 70 years of a McMahon-controlled wrestling promotion. McMahon's father, Vincent James McMahon, created Capitol Wrestling in 1953 and incorporated the company in Washington, D.C. in 1957, promoting pro wrestling mainly in the Northeast Corridor from D.C. to Maine. The company was incorporated in New York in 1961 when the elder McMahon took over promotions in Madison Square Garden, which became Capitol's base of operations for decades. By 1963, the Capitol Wrestling Corporation began doing business as the Worldwide Wrestling Federation after breaking away from the National Wrestling Alliance. In 1982, the elder McMahon, along with his business partners Robert Gorilla Monsoon Morella, Phil Zacco, and Arnold Skoland, began the process of selling the WWF to his sons Titan Sports, which was incorporated in 1980. The sale process played out over the course of a year, with the junior McMahon paying just over $1 million in installments before completing the purchase in 1983. Under Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the then World Wrestling Federation expanded nationally beginning in 1983 and continuing throughout the rest of the decade, later moving into international markets and going on to become the largest and most successful professional wrestling enterprise in history. In October of 1999, WWE went public on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, switching its listing to the New York Stock Exchange 1 year later. Endeavor Group, then known as William Morris Endeavor, purchased controlling interest in the UFC in 2011 for $4.025 billion and bought out the rest of its minority owners in 2021. We will continue to update this story as events warrant. And before we leave you today, we'd like to remind you that however you consume your content, you can find the wrestling news 24 hours a day and 7 days a week across social media. On Twitter, follow us at Wrestling News AV. Our Facebook page is also Wrestling News AV. The Wrestling News can also be found on the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube page. And for those who utilize Amazon Echo devices, just tell Alexa to play the Wrestling News podcast. And remember to make sure you add podcast at the end. Once again, for daily updates, breaking news, and more, follow the Wrestling News across social media.